Greetings, Craddock here. I've got a Tal Magic Missile build for Nephilim Rifting and Low Greater Rifts here, and this has been one of the most exciting builds, one of the most addicting builds I've actually started to play. You just can't stop. It's so amazing. Visually stunning. The Magic Missiles coming out with the Sanctified Power for next season with Magic Missile. We're using the Conflagrate rune, which will pierce enemies. In that sense, very much a screen clearing type of attack. Unfortunately, it's a very weak attack, so we have to put a lot of multipliers, a lot of enhancements to make it work really well. And one of the cool things that is actually going on mechanically is that each of these missiles still has a chance to proc. So we're actually using a lot of proc-based mechanics, such as the Mirrorball. It can see it raining from the sky, definitely fitting for the theme this season, which is angelic and sanctified items. So that's pretty cool. Of course, you also have the meteors that rain down from the Tal set, completing the aesthetic. And it's very exciting that the wizard class now has a Nephilim Rifting build that can compete with the other classes to a degree, and it's just a joy to play. So I wanted to show this clip of how the Seeker rune is interacting with the Conflagrate rune. It seems like the damage of the missiles, and you'll see it here in slow-mo, is only affecting the initial target's hit for the Seeker rune. You see the big values there, and then the targets that get hit behind, they aren't affected by that same Seeker single target damage. They're only affected by the Conflagrate rune. This is why during the Rift, you'll tend to clear targets that are closest to you first. And this is very important to understand. Something else you want to look at is the angle of the Seeker rune when it adjusts. The Conflagrate missile actually has a projectile speed increase, which can be detrimental to the Seeker rune because the Seeker rune only updates once every 0.15 seconds to readjust its angle. And as you can see there, it did hit some of the mobs in the middle with the Seeker rune there, but the Conflagrate was very, very lax and behind. And so, I don't know, I just I guess wanted to show this because it's very important to understanding the damage profile that this particular build will exhibit. Hi, Future Craddock jumping in here just to say this build D3 planner has been changed considerably. You might see some sections of the guide I'm still using depth diggers. We're now using the Mirrorball because this has a multiplier on it. I'm also swapped out the Magic Weapon Ignite for Magic Weapon Deflection because we are now favoring the signature damage a little bit more readily. We've dropped the depth diggers to be able to fit that in, and we're now running Blur because we don't necessarily have to run the Dominance passive for shielding. Additionally, we only have a base of 10 missiles. However, a well-rolled Mirrorball will give us 2 additional for 12 missiles in this particular build. Some points in the guide might reference 20 missiles, just know that this has been reduced to 12. Additionally, I will update all of the gameplay footage excepting the introduction area. There was a lot of work done there to be more representative of the new build. So now with the Mirrorball, we have a more heavy weighting towards that signature damage. The reason I dropped the depth diggers is because they're the same multiplier as the Endless Walk set, but the Endless Walk set grants benefit towards our 2 alternate damage sources, which include the Mirinae for that proc-based backline damage. Also, versus single target, it can be quite nice just to down an enemy. We get the 2-piece meteors, which I'll put the flavor text up on screen. The big deal here is that you no longer have that 8-second internal cooldown before each autoproc meteor comes down. This means we can use this to great advantage, especially since on the PTR at least, new skills are eligible to both proc the 6-piece and the 2-piece, well, I think they proc the 2-piece before, but they now proc the 6-piece, which means you can free up skill slots on your bar. One of them happens to be Familiar Icicle. Well, this is the cold rune we're going to use on Familiar to help us proc our 2-piece meteors. You can also use Storm Armor and Ice Armor. Any rune that deals consistent damage will also proc that 6-piece. So it's going to be very useful in general going forward with the Tal Rasha set. Now, the other elements that we're using to proc are going to be Black Hole Supermassive, Calamity, the Arcane is going to be nice there, and then the Fire, of course. The only element that we're not using consistently is going to be the Black Hole, because we don't have a lot of cooldown. However, Black Hole can be useful versus Pylons, and I'll get into that a little bit later. We have a lot of attack speed in this setup to both enhance our proc and our signature damage. Attack speed on weapon, both rings, gloves, the chest piece, and even the amulet, the Enchantress and the Paragon as well. We're using the Fragment of Destiny and the Shaman del Seer to get attack speed multipliers, so this is how we're attacking so quickly. This allows us to hit the 12 frame FBA. I'm overcapped a little bit on attack speed here because we want to not only hit this breakpoint, but when we have a Frenzied Shrine, we also want to hit the 10 FPA. So 5 attacks per second apparently wasn't enough for me, you know? I just wanted to gain more benefit out of that, because if you don't have the Amulet Affix for attack speed, you won't hit that 10 FPA with the Frenzied, and it just becomes more important. As you gain more and more Paragon, you're going to clear the Rift super quickly anyway, so this is something I feel like you can already optimize for and gain large value out of. Plus, the other point here is that our fire percent on element isn't really helping all of our DPS. We still have the Mirinae, which is holy damage. We have the auto-proc meteors that are not fire, that are also dealing non-fire damage. So I kind of favor the attack speed here in this scenario. Indeed, one of the strengths of the Tal Rasha setup versus LOD is going to be that you can fit in 3 gems. The LOD gem itself is a big detriment because it prevents you from using, for example, Boon of the Hoarder, or prevents you from using the Simplicity Strength, or even when you're Greater Rifting, the Zystone of Vengeance, an extra multiplier on top of that. You also have the auto-proc meteors with this build versus not having them with the LOD set. So it's clear as day which one I would use. I would go for Tal Rasha in this case. Deflection with this build is going to be amazing. It scales with both your attack speed and your vitality and life percent. So this is really nice. It's going to stay on top of the Galvanizing Ward, be refreshed rather readily, and keep it protected. This is all to keep up the Squirt's Necklace multiplier. Like, it would be more beneficial for proccing your 6-piece and the 2-piece meteors if you were to run Storm Armor here instead of Energy Armor. However, because we have no Halo of Carini, no Orb of Infinite Depth that's giving us extra toughness here, we have to run something that's going to give us toughness, and Energy Armor is the play, reducing the damage of incoming attacks that deal a larger portion of our life. Because we don't have a lot of damage reduction, some of the bigger hits in the game are going to deal more than 35% of our health, so reducing them significantly is insane value for toughness. And unfortunately, this kind of means that we're only able to actively proc 3 out of our 4 elements. The extra armor from Energy Armor does sort of make up for not having that 25% resistance, but it does still hurt a little bit. That's why it is still beneficial throughout the Rift to cast your Black Hole now and again. Another thing that's going to keep us safe is actually the crowd control effects in this build. Speaking about Supermassive, you can use this before pylons to pull targets in. You can also use your Teleport Calamity to stomp on targets, stun them, stun elites, make sure they're kept at bay. You have to keep in mind that electrified and reflect mobs with shooting out 20 missiles can be pretty dangerous and take your health down rather quickly. Now, recovery, something that is very important and not necessarily obvious with this build is the amount of recovery you're getting. The secondary on Simplicity Strength hits with primary abilities heal you for 4% of your health. Same deal with the Mirinae is returning 3% of our maximum life. So in those situations where we're under duress and our shield stack has been broken through, you don't want to just continue to take damage and die. You want something that keeps your max life at full. And these two mechanics in particular are going to help amazingly well to keep your health high. On top of that, though, I found it very beneficial to have at least one life per hit affix. Now you can put this, my preference was actually to place it on the weapon because you are so glass cannon with this setup that it was just that important to me to recover health. However, you could easily place this on the bracer or even on your Ring of Royal Grandeur, the life per hit affix, and it wouldn't be as potent, but I thought the trade-off there was very worth doing because you remember 20 magic missiles, they're all proccing, you know, the same amount. You can get a lot of recovery value via this one affix, even though such an affix going towards, especially on the bracer, vitality to buff your shielding is a better usage overall towards your Squirt's uptime. I kind of feel like fitting in that life per hit was definitely worthwhile. You have to consider you only have 1 second life passive here, and it procs really easily. So definitely placing the life per hit was kind of like that second buffer in my mind. One other thing you have to be very careful about with this build is reflect mobs. So Sand Dwellers, Dune Dirge, Spinners, whatever you want to notate them as, you have to, when they have that reflect mechanic active, because we're shooting out 20 projectiles, it's pretty insane how quick you can melt yourself. So just keep in mind that you should probably target these mobs down quickly, and if you can't do that, maybe skip them or hold your attack and find another place to be, pretty much. Another interesting mechanic is Missile Dampener. On these Nephilim rifts, sometime it can be more worthwhile just to skip the Missile Dampener. However, in the greater rifts, I can't really see a way to use the Missile Dampener mechanic to DPS advantage, but it's definitely something that can be problematic at times. Even though there is some advantage to going in close because of how the pattern of the missiles will tend to hit a single target a little bit better when you're closer to that enemy, and this is why we have Audacity in the build, by the way. You tend to have that issue where certain monsters will damage you. Now, if you want a different passive, you can opt for Power Hungry because you are hitting a lot of targets at range as well. Elemental Exposure is pretty good because we're proccing a lot of different elements. Illusionist is also a good take for clicking on pylons, clicking on chests, doors. This sort of activity is always a good pick as well, but since we're mostly teleporting with this build, that is kind of nice. I preferred going Endless Walk with this configuration. You can go Bastions of Will because the Aether Walker Enhanced Calamity casts will proc the second portion of the Bastions of Will bonus. However, in a Nephilim Rifting setup, there's no guarantee you'll have a monster there to proc this on, so you often drop that second level of the bonus. Endless Walk was just more consistent. However, for greater rifting, low greater rifting, definitely makes sense because you're always pretty much going to have a monster nearby where you can keep this bonus up. So we've gone in the low greater rifting setup, the Bastions of Will, worn the Squirt's necklace, and then we have the Ring of Aurora Grandeur in the cube. We've also swapped out some of those legendary gems, Hoarder and Mirinae. They're not as powerful at these low Greater Rifting levels, so you will place these Eyes Stone of Vengeance and the Bandit the Trapped to be able to kill monsters more readily. I was testing Greater Rift 85s at low Paragon. This will translate to, you know, at slightly higher Paragon. Greater Rift 90 clears for some quick gems, quick legendary finds, hopefully get some good primals via this build. For secondaries, you're going to want to seek out gold find affixes. My preference is just to collect more gold while I'm Nephilim rifting and have to do less of those greeds realms. We also have the crowd control impairment reduction, quite a nice affix to have. Remember that we do have the avarice band emanated from our follower configuration. The Greater Rifting setup is quite different. Pickup radius will be very important for this build because you're only teleporting, you're not really running around. So your pickup radius translates to quicker clear, reduces the number of times you have to teleport to pick them up. Alright, that's about it for this build. I hope you enjoyed the content. Do like, subscribe, and look forward to the gameplay footage. It's coming next.